Longhorn Nation, Sooner fans, welcome to episode 79 of the Bevo podcast, the only podcast exclusively dedicated to covering the greatest rivalry in college football, the University of Texas, University of Oklahoma. I'm here with my man Kevin Miller. I am John Whitson. It was a relaxing, stress-free bye week for Longhorn fans and Sooner fans alike. However, it was sweetened with a little bit of USC going down to Notre Dame. 48-20, Kevin. You picked the USC Trojans. You said there's no way Caleb Williams goes to the Mecca of I'm sorry, not the Mecca, goes to Notre Dame to lose. And yet, that's exactly what happened because they got curb stomped by Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. It wasn't close, it wasn't pretty, and it was awesome. How do you feel about that, Kevin? How does that make you feel to see USC get their absolute brains beat down by Notre Dame, a 3-2 Notre Dame team, a team on the verge of collapse, maybe shouldn't even be playing college football anymore, and they got destroyed, Kevin, destroyed.
Okay, first of all,
and it was
the
great.
passion in your voice, you and the rest of the OU fans, I think you guys are more happy about this than you were about beating Texas in the Red River Shootout last week.
Well, I guess.
Are you sure?
Here's the thing.
Are you sure, though?
I kind of expected to beat you guys, so there wasn't that excitement level. But I kind of expected Notre Dame to let me down, and they didn't. So, yeah.
I don't know. I think y'all are way more excited about this than you were about the Cotton Bowl victory. Listen, well, we knew the formula, right, for USC losing. All it would have taken was one off game by Caleb Williams.
Yes.
That's all it would have taken, and we got that, and we got it right away. That's the crazy thing. Their first drive, he throws an interception. They return it to, the 3-yard line? I mean, you want to talk about a nightmare start for the team. It was so bad that the USC defense didn't even have a horrible game that they normally do.
Well, that's the thing. This loss doesn't go on to the USC defense. It just doesn't. This is not a situation where they got outlasted or outscored or broke down or had major coverage busts. Let's face it, Notre Dame, they're not great offensively. Hartman only goes 13 for 20, 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he didn't have to because USC was that bad. Kevin, 5 total turnovers. 5. Caleb Williams threw 3 interceptions, 2 more fumbles. But the stat of the day is that Notre Dame had 6 sacks and 11 total tackles for loss against USC. They couldn't protect Caleb Williams. They were in his face all day. It was punishing. And I got to tell you, it is a blueprint for anybody that goes up against USC again. You contain Caleb Williams. Don't let him escape. Don't let him make the miracle plays, albeit easier said than done, and force him to make competitive throws. Man, I tell you what, dude, USC got exposed, and it was not pretty.
No, it was not pretty at all. And like I said, from the jump, to throw an interception on the first drive, and to throw 3 in the first half. I thought the coverage had him a little bit confused. They took away his first read. And like you said, they really contained him. He's at his best when he's able to extend plays and make those kind of crazy back shoulder type, across his body throws that most quarterbacks can't make. And they did a really good job of just making him sit in the pocket. And then when he's sitting in the pocket, the rush was getting there so quickly. The offensive line could not protect him at all. So, yeah, this led to a bad game. They were down so quickly in the second quarter, they really couldn't get that running game going, which I thought looked okay, but they just couldn't commit to it with being down so quickly.
In addition to not being able to pass the ball very well, USC could not run the ball very well. Only 103 yards rushing. Again, this is a Notre Dame team that was not moving the ball well. They only had 125 yards rushing. So again, this wasn't like some sort of dynamic offense that just, that the defense got lucky against USC and then USC's defense broke down. it was just a bad game for USC, and it kind of all crystallized when USC kind of pulled close, kind of was going to make it a game there in the fourth quarter, and then Notre Dame has a 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. You're like,
Yeah, that was backbreaking. It seemed like the momentum may be beginning to shift. And you thought, okay, well, if the defense makes a stop, which as bad as their defense is going against this Notre Dame offense, I trusted them to be able to make a stop there. And then, yeah, you give up that 99-yard kickoff return. It was over after that.
Now, I'm looking at your stats you've got up there. 13 first downs for Notre Dame versus 23. Again, speaking to the fact that Notre Dame, not an offensive juggernaut of a game at all, but they didn't make any mistakes. They were incredibly disciplined on defense. And that's the deal. I texted you this last night when I was watching the game. What Oklahoma fan was getting really, really sick and tired of from a Lincoln Riley coach team was the lack of discipline. And that's what you saw in this game. It was just a lack of discipline. The little things that teams have to do to stay in games and win games, USC flat wasn't doing it. Notre Dame exposed them on every level. And I'll tell you what, when I think about USC going forward, you're looking at these stats right now, right? Is there anything that tells you Utah can't do this same thing to them?
No.
Is Utah on their schedule? Schedule?
Yes. They've got a gauntlet coming up. I was talking with Jeffrey, your son, the other day about this. And their schedule, he said 5 losses. I said 4. I mean, look at the schedule they have coming up here. Notre Dame, Utah goes to LA. They go to Cal, right? They should win that game. But look at this. Washington, I know it's in LA, but I mean, we saw what Washington was able to do yesterday. Then they go to Oregon. To Oregon? Are you serious? Then UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, just take a look at that, right? And take a look at that schedule. And after seeing what Notre Dame did, that makes you think that Utah has every bit of a chance to do the same thing. Because I don't think Utah with their backup quarterbacks are as inept as Notre Dame is offensively. No. I really don't.
No, I don't think so either.
I think you can
They've got a better run game.
Exactly.
A more consistent running game.
Oh, dude, I don't even want to think about whatever the Washington game and Oregon game lines are. I'm telling you right now, I'm picking them right now. Like, you just name the line. I don't care. After what I saw, and we're about to get to that game, what I saw, let's just transition to it right now. What I saw in the Pac-12 Northwest, Oregon and Washington winning 36-33 over Oregon. The opposite of the ineptitude, the opposite of the ineffectiveness, the opposite of 5 turnovers in a game is a game like Washington and Oregon, where combined, Kevin, they only have 1 turnover in the entire game. In a losing effort, Bo Nix goes 33-44 for 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Michael Penix at home with the win, 22 for 37, 302 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Those 2 stat lines are not 2 dudes out there just messing around. Those were fantastic stat lines by fantastic players on fantastic teams.
It really was, man. It was a joy to watch that game. Just high-level football. We got the best of college football, right? We got an incredible environment. We had really good players, and we had really good coaching, right? Oregon, Dan Lanning just gambling repeatedly on 4th down, trying to win the game. We saw Michael Penix making some incredible accurate throws. We saw the receiving core of Washington, which we hyped up going in, and they absolutely lived up to it. This game really had everything. It was kind of like our game last week in the Cotton Bowl, right? You just had everything. You had both teams putting it all out there. Great players, great coaching. It was just a fun game to watch, man.
Well, I will agree. Well, first of all, I agree with you on most of what you said in terms of it being an awesome, fun game and a lot like our game. But unlike our game, this was a shootout. So our game had turnovers and fake plays. This was they were just lining up and taking shots at each other, dude. And it was a lot of fun. You talk about Dan Lanning. Did he outcoach himself? Did he outthink himself? Did he rely too much on the analytics? He had 3 4th downs. He didn't convert on any 3 of them. He could have gotten points off of 2 of them. And that drastically could have changed the overall
Yeah.
direction of the game.
I would have liked to see him go for the field goal at the end of the first half when they were down there and just go into the locker room down one. Other than that, I don't mind the decision to go for it, but a lot of those play calls that they did, I didn't like. The one right before half when they did the sprint out, I just don't like the sprint out there unless it's a run pass option with the quarterback.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the call, and the other calls I really didn't love either. But I don't mind the aggressiveness on those other two.
You've got to take points at the end of the first half. And
Yeah,
I don't know, dude. You get down into the red zone when you know it's a game that's going to be. You never thought one team was going to run away with it. At least I didn't. And you don't know what Dan Lanning's going through or what's going through his mind or what the analytics book says. But I think when you get that far into the red zone, you've got to take the points. And this wasn't like Texas on the 1 yard line. They were like 4th and 4, 4th and
yeah,
5.
they were back.
They
Agreed.
were, again, now the one at the end of the game, I actually do. I think you go for it there because you were on their side you were on the plus side of the 50. If you pick it up, the game is over and you're on the road. I think you go for the win. However, Michael Penix, they stop him there. Michael Penix gets it. 2 plays and he's in the end zone and they leave over 1:30 left on the game. You said it in a text message to me, way too much time for Bo Nix.
Way too much time. I mean, that might as well have been 10 minutes on the clock. It was crazy. They had a sense of urgency, and I get that's a big part of their offense, but they were lightning speed there. And I thought for sure that they were going to end up regretting scoring so quickly. I mean, it worked out for them in the end with them missing the field goal. But at the time, I mean, I was really nervous for him.
Those 2 throws might have been his best 2 throws of the day. And he had some very good throws, but those
He
2
did.
were fantastic.
Yeah, the consistency of his throws, really all game long. I mean, he missed a few. And again, Oregon has a really good defense, right? They've been one of the best defenses in the country. But this scheme that they run, that Washington runs, and we talked about just having so many weapons. And they didn't even have McMillan. He only played a couple snaps, right? And he actually ended up having to lead the game. This Giles Jackson kid shows up, 6 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. And then Odunze and Pope both had over 100 yards receiving. So, man, yeah, we got it all. They also had a 100-yard rusher, too.
They had a 100-yard rusher, but because Penix, I guess, had a couple sacks, they only rushed for 99 on their stat line. Oregon outgained them 130 yards, which surprised me. I know Oregon's got a good defense, but I expected Washington to outgain Oregon. I got to tell you, we've seen a lot of Bo Nix over the years, from his days
Yeah.
at Auburn, and all of this kind of stuff. And we've talked about good Bo, bad Bo, whatever. This did not look like the same quarterback to me. This kid looked really, really poised. He looked really good, made good decisions, strong arm, led his team down with no panic. He wasn't running around. I remember at Auburn, he was always with the running around and having to pick up. I always thought of him as almost like a Sam Ellinger kind of player where he had to go run around to pick up yards and kind of keep things alive. That's not
Correct.
what I got from Bo Nix. He looks like he could be an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, and I've been hearing his name kind of shoot up the draft boards, and you can see why, right? Like you said, he operated well from the pocket. He escaped the pocket and still is able to throw. But again, like you said, he's not doing that kind of hero ball that I think he had to do that at Oregon, or excuse me, at Auburn. Same thing with you mentioned Sam Ellinger. He had to do that, right? When he was at Texas. He
Yeah.
looks so comfortable. He looks so confident. This scheme fits him perfectly. So it's really good to see a player leave a place like Auburn, go to Oregon, and just be in a system that fits him better. Look, Oregon lost this game, but this conference is still wide open. Now, Washington did a great job of putting themselves, I think, in the driver's seat. But man, there is a lot of football left to be played, and we have not seen the last of Oregon at all.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Now, are they divisionless in the
I think
Pac-12
they,
now?
you know what? I don't know. You know how they are with these things. They change these things so much. So honestly, I don't even know if they have the divisions or not. You check on that real quick.
Well, as you're checking on that, in the latest AP poll, as of week 8, Washington has jumped Oklahoma. It is now Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Oklahoma, Penn State, Texas, Oregon, North Carolina is your top 10. Any issues with that poll as I read it out loud to you, Kevin
Not
Miller?
really. I thought Washington actually might have gone a little bit higher after beating Oregon, just because I think the win is so impressive. I think you can make a legitimate argument for putting Washington as high as 3. I think their win is more impressive than anything Ohio State has done so far. I mean, what do you think?
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, I think what I've seen from Washington and Oregon against Ohio State, I think either one of those teams is probably favored, and I would pick in a game against Ohio State. I haven't seen the offensive power from Ohio State and just the versatility that these two teams displayed. Michigan, on the other hand, rolled yesterday. And, that's one of those teams where maybe they haven't played anybody, but the people they have played, they've beaten the absolute crap out of. So they
Yeah.
play Indiana and won 52-7 and apparently got off to a slow start. Right? That was the article I read this morning. That
Yeah, I don't think they had scored, halfway through the second quarter. Maybe they had a field goal. I think they had a
I,
big return, and then that's
I,
what kind of got them going.
the number 1 team in the country, Georgia, beats Vanderbilt 37-20. Georgia's just going to be. They've got a couple games coming up. They've got Florida coming up, Tennessee, Missouri with a big win over Kentucky, so they'll have to play Missouri. So there's 3 teams, particularly Tennessee and Missouri, that are playing a whole lot better. I just don't think it's going to be enough to knock off the Bulldogs of
Yeah, it
Georgia. I
looks
think they're
tough.
really, really good.
And yeah, in the SEC East so far, with what we've seen, I don't see anybody that's ready to challenge Georgia. I mean, it would take basically a historic performance by that team, and you have to pair that with Georgia just being off their game, having a few turnovers of their own.
Yeah, you're right. And so when I look at this poll, I'm kind of with you in terms of bumping up Washington. But, you look at Ohio State, they did handle Purdue 41-7. Florida State rolled Syracuse 41-3. And then Penn State, right there behind Oklahoma, beat UMass, I guess, in a throwaway game 63-0. So everybody that was in the top 10, and then the other game that was in action, because Texas at 8 was idle, and then North Carolina going up against Miami. North Carolina wins 41-31. That was a very, very good game. Drake May went 17 of 33 for 273 yards, 4 touchdowns. Taylor Van Dyke, I'm sorry, 31 of 48, 391 yards, 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, had the 2 interceptions. I'll tell you what was really cool about yesterday was outside of Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy contenders really put on a show.
They balled
Uh,
out for sure.
I
They
mean, the
really
two
did ball out.
between Drake May, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., they looked really, really good. And I think Penix is a firm number 1 right now in most Heisman voters' minds. Would you think?
I would think so. I mean, that was really impressive what he did yesterday against a good Oregon defense too. That's what. It's not just the fact that they beat a good team; they beat a team with a really, really good defense. I think they were top 10 in points allowed defensively. So it was a great
We're,
performance by him. And I thought Bo Nix was really good too, like you said earlier.
would you trade Quinn Ewers for Michael Penix Jr.?
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
DG's playing really, really well. Maybe if he hears this, he'll get fired up and keep playing really well. But I do think Michael Penix Jr. is the best quarterback in the country right now.
It's
For
just,
what?
yeah. I mean, it's just a different level of accuracy compared with the arm strength, right? Quinn can make some throws that just make you say, "Oh my goodness," and then he can make some throws that make you say, "Oh my goodness, what was that about?" And you don't see too many of those, poor decisions, poor throws from Penix.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And
I think
DG,
it's the same thing if you're comparing him with DG. I think you would probably
DG,
say the same
well, and
thing.
DJ, I think is making really, really good decisions right now.
Yeah.
And I think that in terms of his maturity and everything, He's right where we need him to be to continue winning. But golly, was it the first touchdown that Penix threw the left hash to the right corner of the end zone? And
Just dropped it in.
I'm like, I don't know. We've seen Caleb Williams make throws, and he probably can make that throw, but they're outside of those two. I don't know. Drake May, maybe. Does Drake May have the arm strength though that Penix
He
does?
does, but man, out of that touch, the arm strength and the touch, you don't see them combine a lot. When you can combine the two, that's when you get a really special thrower of the football.
Quarterbacks that did not have as good a day as the ones mentioned before, but still were able to eke out a win. Jalen Milroe for Alabama beats Arkansas 24-21. Alabama just doesn't look right though.
Yeah, they keep finding a way to win, but it's one of those things, right? If they go up against a really good team who's ready to go, they could be in some trouble. The great thing for them though is that defense is going to be good all the time. I thought Arkansas did some really good things yesterday. I thought KJ was really good yesterday.
What? No,
But
look at his line though, man. Like,
I know. I guess you had to if you were watching it, man. He did
I
some good things against that defense.
okay. So I thought he did some good things too. Okay, like I thought, oh man, KJ looks a lot better than dude. He went 14 for 24 for 150 yards.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I'm just saying
but
that's
I
a really
saw
good defense, man. So
no,
I mean,
no.
like I said, he did some good things. It's just they have the best defense that they've had in a very long time.
And is it going to be wasted with the worst offense they've had in a really long time?
I don't know, man. The thing it's kind of a perfect storm for them when it comes to not having a dynamic offense, right? They got an inexperienced quarterback, and they don't have the dynamic receivers that they had before, right? We talked about they had 4 first-round receivers on one team. 4.
Yeah.
So like they just don't have that right now. And then when you combine all that with also a young offensive line, right? And a young quarterback, it's just a perfect storm for not being a great offense.
I mean, you say receivers. I just say it's the complete lack of a running game. They just don't have a running game right now.
Yeah,
When
the
they're
run,
up,
yeah,
when you're up, because they were up 24-6, maybe.
yeah, they were up big.
They were up big on Arkansas in the fourth quarter. And you just got to, at that point, if you're Alabama, like if you're thinking of Alabama from over the years, this is when you just run the ball and just
Correct.
run them to death and then go beat them 31-6, but it took you a 9-minute 12-play drive at 4 yards apiece, and you just pounded them to oblivion. But
Yeah, they don't
Alabama's
have that.
they're not able to do that right now. They're just flat
No.
out not able to do that. When an Arkansas team who we've seen give up points to BYU, we've seen give up a ton of points to LSU. It's I mean, golly, is Arkansas at 2-4 now?
2-4, and I think most of their losses have been very close. So the team still keeps showing up, right? They haven't quit, right? But yeah, it's a rough season. I thought they would have a pretty good season, and it's just not going the way that they had hoped.
One of the undefeateds goes down yesterday. Louisville loses to Pitt 38-21. We can scratch them off of the list of playoff contenders.
Yeah, man, I think they got a little bit too high off that Notre Dame win last week because you can't lose like that. You can't lose by 3 scores to Pitt after you beat Notre Dame. And you beat Notre Dame by 2 scores, then you lose at Pitt by 3. Not
Uh,
quite ready for prime time.
no, and I mean we talked about it when we start talking about Oklahoma and Texas. Another really good reason I'm happy we got the bye week, even though we're going up against UCF. You can get too high, and that's a prime example of it because Pitt's not any good. They shouldn't have lost that game. Oregon State beat UCLA 36-24. Utah over Cal 34-14. Duke with a big win 24-3. Another game that we picked was Tennessee versus A&M 20-13. I got to tell you, we hammer them on this show, but I'm going to hammer them again. I don't know what Jimbo Fisher and now Bobby Petrino are doing on offense. They don't have an identity. It's like one game they're slinging it around, the next game they're trying to run it. It doesn't even matter what they do. It doesn't work. And Tennessee is a good team. This is not a knock. I picked Tennessee to win. This isn't just about winning, but only scoring 13 points against Tennessee, who's not a lockdown defense this year. Dude, Petrino and Jimbo Fisher got to figure something out. Like, they are not the football minds that we expected this year.
No, they really got to figure it out because they have so many good players. They have talent everywhere. And look, you've heard me say this, right? Texas has squandered talent for a long time, for a decade, right? And I'm saying this with A&M, but Texas recruits well, but they've never recruited like A&M has these last few classes. They have historically good recruiting classes, and when I look out there, I'm like, you got Le'Veon Moss is a good running back. Anaya Smith is a really good receiver. I think Evan Stewart is one of the best receivers in the country, and I'm not seeing these guys make impact. Why? Why can't you scheme some way to get the ball to Evan Stewart? Right, he's one of the best receivers in the country. Right, like our coaches. Oh, you get the ball to your guys. Say what you will about Lincoln Riley, right? But
Maybe not
historically,
last
he
night, but
gets the ball. Yeah, not last night, but if he has a guy like CeeDee Lamb, he's gonna get CeeDee Lamb the football,
yeah.
right? He get Marvin Mims the football. Why aren't they getting Evan Stewart the ball? It doesn't make any sense to me, right? You have all these guys on defense, and they did a pretty good job. But man, 13 points, like you said, it's Tennessee defense. This is not. They don't got Reggie White out there. What is
No,
this?
it's you almost get the sense that, well, you've been talking about this as long as the Boomer Bevo podcast is beyond, that Jimbo Fisher is not the offensive mind everybody wants to think he is. He hasn't had a productive quarterback since Jameis Winston. Like, those are just the
Correct.
facts.
Yes.
Those are statistical facts. He has not had a productive quarterback since Jameis Winston. So he's not that guy. Now you throw Bobby Petrino, who's been in and out of the game, who's had different stops at various places, claim to fame. Was he the coach, Lamar Jackson?
He was. He was Lamar
Okay,
Jackson's coach.
that's kind of his claim to fame. Had some good years at Arkansas, but you wonder, has the game passed him by? Is it a different game than
Yeah.
even when he was? Because you're right. When you think about like offense and just the ability to get people in space and make some things happen, it's just evident A&M can't do it. They just flat can't do it, and that's with all the talent in the world. You talk about out recruiting Texas. They've out recruited everybody over the last 3 or 4 years, except for maybe Georgia.
Yeah,
They have
Georgia,
been,
Alabama, and maybe Ohio State. They're right there with those four.
and they just have zero to show for it. And now, can it make me any happier? Oh my God, they could lose another one. But that's not the point. Is just from a football standpoint and analyzing the game and analyzing what I'm seeing. It's just a complete waste of talent and
Yeah.
just a disaster from the coaching
But
perspective.
hey, like you said the other day, if they were to fire him, right, or maybe they don't fire him, if they keep him, there's going to be a mass exodus of players. You have to believe, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I think we'll all be fighting over some of those guys.
Hey, dude,
If
well, let me
Evan
ask
Stewart
you.
wants to come to Texas, come on,
Now,
Evan. We'll take you.
on Wednesday, on our previous episode, you warned me not to root for Jimbo being out of there because they'd go for Coach Prime. Coach Prime loses on Friday night, I believe, Thursday night or Friday night,
Right.
in a dramatic fashion after being up 29-0 against Stanford. The Stanford Cardinal, who is terrible, comes back to beat Colorado. Is the star dimming for Coach Prime? Is the
I don't think
guaranteed
so.
job offers just kind of starting to maybe come back down to earth a little bit?
Maybe so. Maybe so. But this was not good, right? And I always say, listen, they don't have great players. They don't. They got a few great players, but overall, they don't have a good offensive line. They have a bad defense. However, I can't excuse this. You can't be up 29-0 at halftime and then get outscored 36-7 in the second half. Stanford, did you see that receiver from Stanford? Who was that kid? I've never even heard of him. This kid had 294 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. They couldn't cover him. I give Stanford credit. They were throwing at Travis Hunter. He looked rusty on defense. He was dynamic on offense. He looked a little bit rusty on defense, and they were throwing right at him. Even when the coverage was good, they were still throwing to him. So I give Stanford credit for just going at him and coming back, fighting back. But yeah, it's a bad look for Colorado.
You got to win when you're up 29-0. You need to win. Washington State gets the doors blown off of them by Arizona in kind of a surprise loss. LSU beats Auburn handily 48-18. In Big 12 play, Oklahoma State takes down the 25th ranked Kansas Jayhawks. 39-32. Alan Bowman throws for 28 for 41, 336 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kansas, Jason Bean, 23 of 34, 410 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But let me ask you this. Is OSU back on track? Have they found something?
And it looks like they did, because I watched a lot of this game yesterday, and they look like a good football team from what I saw yesterday. And I know Kansas has still been playing with their backup quarterback, but he played well.
Yeah, he played really
The
well.
star for them, though, was their sophomore running back, Ollie Gordon. And I've talked about him on the podcast, talked about him last year before you guys played in Bedlam. He was a kid I thought Texas should have offered when he was in high school. Did you see his stat line yesterday?
No.
Let me pull it up real quick. It was impressive.
Well, while you're pulling that up, Oklahoma State goes on the road at West Virginia next week and then hosts Cincinnati before hosting Oklahoma in 3 weeks. Oklahoma State has a chance to pile up a couple of wins. West Virginia, while Kevin's looking up that stat, goes down in dramatic fashion to the Houston Cougars on Thursday night. I'm confused by those 2 nights because there was a couple of games each of those nights. What was his stat? Do you have stats pulled up?
I got his stats pulled up. He had 29 carries for 168 yards and a touchdown. And then he had 6 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown.
Was this the big guy? Is this the big guy, number 7?
I think he wears, what's his number? I'm not sure.
But is he like a big dude?
Yeah, he's a bigger running back. He's like 6'1", 220. I think he wears, let's see. But yeah, he was outstanding. He might wear a 0.
Yeah, it's a single digit though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
yeah, like I said, super talented guy. During the recruiting process, like I said, I thought Texas should have offered him because he's a big running back with speed. So he had 35 touches overall, 168 rushing yards, 116 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns against Kansas. That is a massive, massive game.
Well, I'll tell you what, they have a chance to pile up 2 wins because since Cincinnati's no good. They got blown out by Iowa State. And then West Virginia, again, going down to Houston, 41-39. You know what happened in that game?
I did. I saw the ending of it. It was insane.
I thought I had seen the ending of it because I watched the entire 4th quarter and I saw West Virginia. And I thought it was interesting, right? Because we had just come off the Oklahoma game where OU had got it with 1:17 left. And then West Virginia gets it with 1:17 left. And I'm like, oh, well, this is too weird. And then West Virginia marches right down the field. And then they get it down to 4th and 10. And you're thinking, oh, man, Houston has a chance to hold them. And then West Virginia scores with 13 seconds left, 15 seconds left. And I was like, oh, well, Houston sucks. And I turned the TV off.
Well, yeah, you missed a great inning. I think the biggest thing, first and foremost, was the penalty. The penalty, right?
Yes, the celebration penalty.
The celebration penalty. So they have to kick off from deeper to get a decent return out of it. 2 kind of quick outs, and it sets up the Hail Mary. Hail Mary was answered. Incredible. What a horrible way to lose a football game if you're West Virginia, especially the fact you were undefeated in conference play at the time.
Well, we had just talked about it being the 2nd best team in the conference, and then they go and lose to Houston. And Houston's terrible. That doesn't change my opinion of Houston. The problem is I look at Oklahoma State and Kansas, and I think, okay, so now I think to myself, well, maybe now Oklahoma State's the team, right? Maybe now they're the team that we got to worry about. Dude, they can just go and lose to Virginia next week. When it comes to the Big 12 conference, I really think Oklahoma's pretty good. I think Texas is pretty good. Outside of that, I mean, you try to make a case for anybody, whether it's K-State or Kansas or Oklahoma State. Look at Texas Tech. They lost to K-State 38-21. I mean, Texas Tech's a dumpster fire. That guy might get fired at the end of this year. He might get fired.
Did you see that freshman quarterback?
No.
Kansas State? For Kansas State? This kid, Avery Johnson.
Is it related to Avery Johnson?
I don't think so. Oh, he's got long blonde hair, but you never know. You never know. This kid came into the game for Will Howard. I don't know. No, listen, I'm not sure if Will Howard was injured or if he was just ineffective. But he came into the game and he looked like Eric Crouch.
Just running around like a crazy
Just
person.
running around like crazy. 5 rushing touchdowns. 5. The backup quarterback came in and rushed for 5 touchdowns against Texas Tech. In Lubbock, by the way.
Texas Tech. Oh my God.
Like this, first of all, you guys don't play K-State, right?
Or Tech. We don't play K-State.
Okay.
And now I wish we played
This
them
guy
both.
makes me nervous. Texas has won like 6 or 7 straight against K-State. So K-State used to be that purple kryptonite, not anymore. But this kid makes me nervous because Texas historically, when they face these kind of mobile quarterbacks, we make them look like Heisman Trophy candidates. So we got to figure out how we're going to stop this guy when that game comes in here in a couple weeks.
K-State's only loss in conference to Oklahoma State, though, right? So they're still only at 1 loss.
Correct.
Yeah. Speaking of backup quarterbacks, in the last score of the weekend, worth mentioning, TCU beats BYU. I had asked, golly, why are they favored by 5.5? Well, I don't know, but they won 41-11, so I'm glad I didn't pick that game. Josh Hoover came in for Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris has got knee issues.
Yeah, he was out. He didn't play at all.
439 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was your backup quarterback against BYU. 439 yards and 4 touchdowns. So
yeah. I don't know if they changed up the scheme between Chandler Morris and this kid, but yeah, BYU clearly was not ready for whatever they brought. Whatever TCU brought, BYU was not ready for it.
No, and I'll tell you what, these 3, with the exception of Houston, I guess, pulling out a big win, these 4 new teams to the Big 12 were not ready for Big 12 play. And this is against a down Big 12. This is a down Big 12, and they're not ready.
Houston is 1-2. And then UCF or BYU is 1-2. So BYU and Houston are both 1-2. UCF and Cincinnati are both 0-3 in the conference so far.
Yeah. And I think the win against BYU and UCF BYU's win was against UCF, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you're UCF, I mean, now you got to go to Norman. So good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. Going to our picks. The Washington-Oregon game was a 3-point spread, and it actually pushed. You had Washington. I had Oregon. Notre Dame. Of course, I had Notre Dame over USC, and I knew it was going to go down exactly the way it went down. Win for me. North Carolina, we both won. Oregon State. I don't even know if we mentioned this, but they beat down UCLA. You had UCLA. I had Oregon State, so that's a win for you. We both had Tennessee. You moved to 22-11-2. I moved to 18-15-2. Pretty good year for the Boomer Bevo podcast so far. Makes me almost want to think about quitting while we're ahead, Kevin.
Hey, listen, we got to keep it pushing, man. We don't have actual money in the line.
Speaking of actual money, if you want to save money on your insurance claim, in fact, if you want to make more money from your insurance claim, you want to give Brown O'Haver a call at 405-735-5510. Brown O'Haver typically makes clients 30 to 40% more than they would make on their own in the adjustment of insurance claims. Whether you've had a loss to your home, your business from fire, wind, theft, tornado, vandalism, whatever the case may be, if it's an insurable loss to your property, you're going to want to give Brown O'Haver a call at 405-735-5510. Let them work for you, not the insurance company. Kevin, it was a bye week, but the bye week is over. It is now game week again. Texas is going up against Houston. Houston's coming off that dramatic win. What's your way too early week thoughts against Houston? Where's Texas? How have they recovered from their loss to Oklahoma? Injury updates, anything like that?
Still quiet on the injury front. I don't know what the status of Jalen Catalon is or Jake Majors, the starting center. Catalon is a safety, by the way. Don't know what the status is for those 2 guys. I think we should get some other guys back, though. Cole Hudson, one of their offensive linemen who's been down for a while, he should be back. So, honestly, man, I'm looking forward to seeing him play again, just to get back out there. And I'm looking for improvement, right? I think they've been pretty good so far this season. I think they've done some really good things on offense and on defense. But what I want to see improvement on, we'll start defensively, right? I want to see better communication. The communication was horrible in moments in the Cotton Bowl, especially on that last drive. apparently Sark said that the safeties are playing a different coverage than the linebackers. I don't understand how that happens in a moment like that, but it makes sense when you look at how the middle of the field was so wide open when we knew that they were going to throw across the middle.
Yep, we talked
So
about
they
that
got
all
to
week. Yep.
correct, right? So we got to clean that up. And then offensively, we got to get better in the red zone, right? You look at the goal line stand that you guys had against us. Again, that's been happening all season, right? I think that was the biggest example of it. But it's happened all season. We've struggled to get the ball into the red score touchdowns when we get the ball into the red zone. We got to clean that up. We have too many good players out there. And we have different types of players. It's not like we've got a bunch of small receivers. It's like we got a bunch of small running backs. We've got all sorts of different weapons that we can use down there. So we got to scheme better, and we got to get better and scoring touchdowns in the red zone, man. So that's what I'm looking to see. I want to see him refocus. I want to see him come out with a lot of energy and just really take it to Houston. That's what I want to see.
Any concerns going to Houston? I mean,
No,
Houston's
not really, man. I mean, they got Donovan Smith as their quarterback, and he was a quarterback for Texas Tech last year when we lost in Lubbock, right? But again, we had a backup quarterback. They had 100 plays against our defense, so not a ton of concerns. But again, right? I just want to see them come out and just not even make it a thought. Just come out and just smash these dudes, right? Score in the red zone, communicate on defense, beat these guys, and get on to K-State the next week.
I'm looking up your early line. What time do y'all play on Saturday? There
It is
Y'all
3
are
o'clock,
20
I believe.
22-point favorites. 3 o'clock.
22.
Is that a Longhorn Network kickoff?
No, I believe it's going to be on Fox, actually.
At 3 o'clock? What a weird
3
time.
p.m. Yeah, it is an interesting time. I think for some reason the Fox game starts a little bit later because I think their early morning kickoff game always seems to go long.
Okay. And they're probably running in. You're going to start running into some baseball stuff too on Fox.
Yeah,
That'll be
pretty
another
close,
thing.
pretty deep into the season. So
Yeah, that'll be another thing. Oklahoma's going up against Central Florida. This is Dylan Gabriel's old team. Central Florida, as we've talked about, is 0-3 in conference play.
0-3.
They are entering the game as 18-point underdogs, coming to Norman. Oklahoma coming off the big win against Texas. You talk about we're down Andrell Anthony, so that's going to be the big thing. I'd like to see what happens with the offensive lineman. I haven't heard anything on Matuire to see what if he's back. Yeah, so I don't know what that story is. So those are your two big injuries. Looks like Gentry Williams is okay. So from an injury standpoint, I don't know. It's not great, but I guess it could be worse. We have a lot of talented receiver. I think you're going to see a continued emergence and more targets to Nick Anderson. And then, as I talked about last week, I want to see Petaway more. I think he's our next best option. The other option, though, is Brennan Thompson. We didn't even talk about him, but maybe this is a chance for him to get in and get some more touches. So, I think that those are some opportunities there. But as far as improvement goes and what we need to see, this is the game, right? I say this every week, but I think UCF might be the best example of a situation where Oklahoma needs to come out and assert some physical dominance on the offensive line and run the ball and try to find an identity running the ball and try to find out who that guy is. Is it Tawi Walker? Is it Marcus Major? Is it Gavin Sawchuk? Is Javante Barnes back better? But let's try to see if we can't get more than 48 yards rushing. Let's try to see if our quarterback isn't the leading rusher. Look, you got to do what you have to do to win the game. And Dylan Gabriel did what he had to do down in the Cotton Bowl to win the game. But it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to have your quarterback be your leading rusher in 2023 when you're not running the wishbone or something like that. It's just, that doesn't make sense. So we've got to establish a running game, and then everything else needs to be cleaner. It should be easier. The competition's not as good. The game's at home. It needs to be cleaner on the special teams, right? We don't need the penalties. We don't need the block punts. We don't need the fake punts letting go through. Just all those little things that I still, as I say them out loud, I cannot believe it didn't cost us in the Cotton Bowl. I cannot believe that we had 3 miscues in special teams and yet somehow won that game. So to me, that's the biggest deal is the running game. And I got to tell you, dude, we're 6 games into the season. This will be game 7. First of all, it's crazy because I can't believe the season's passed that much. But second of all, Oklahoma, do we say it right now? Do I just we don't have a run game? Is that just where we're at?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we talked about that earlier, right? Like if it doesn't happen this week, it may not be happening this year, right? I mean, you got smart coaches, right? So I think they've tried probably everything that they could. So what I want to see is Sawchuk been injured, right? What's up with Barnes? If those two guys are healthy, what does the running game look like for OU? That's what I want to see because is it because I mean I like Toby Walker, right? He does a good job. He's a physical runner, but he's not as dynamic as Barnes, especially as Sawchuk. So I want to see what it looks like with a healthy Gavin Sawchuk before you just say we just don't have it this year.
Well, he played. We talked about this. He played in the Texas game. He only had 1 touch, but he was out there for a number of plays. You got to think if they played him, then he wasn't that hurt, or they just had. I don't know. Marcus Major looked a little banged up against you guys. It looked like Tommy Walker got the bulk of the snaps in the second half. The kid played good. Look, he played good, but again, 48 yards. It's not enough to win games. We've got to be. It's enough to win games against. Texas was just a weird game. The stats almost don't even tell the story of the Texas game, but we need to have some running backs that are consistently getting between 80, 90, 100 yards rushing. Like they need to be a threat because you've talked about it. In order for the offense to work, there has to be the illusion of a good running game because it's so predicated on the play action. It's predicated on the RPOs. And I guess if you use the quarterback run game in place of it, that's fine. But I just don't love the idea of just running my quarterback out there 15 times.
Yeah, with Dylan Gabriel, right? He's not the biggest guy out there. You don't want him taking those hits because I mean, it's not going to last the entire season. Like you said, it's not sustainable.
When you watched the Washington and Oregon game, did you see anything that concerned you about if Texas and or Oklahoma played either one of those teams in a playoff college football playoff game?
Well, with Washington,
The
it's
receivers.
all the weapons. Yeah, they've got so many, right? And their offensive line, who you hear nothing about, they seem to do a good job, right? They weren't just Penix was never really running for his life. Right? I mean, Oregon got some pressure because they have really good players and a good scheme, but he wasn't really running for his life. He was still able to operate the full offense. And as good as that defense is for Oregon, if you give him time, I mean, those receivers are eventually going to get open. And he's so accurate. Even when the coverage is good, he's still dropping it in spots where only the receiver can catch it.
It's just kind of different though, right? Because I look at that game and I think to myself, maybe this is just my crimson colored glasses. I think Oklahoma can play with those 2 teams.
Yeah, listen, I don't think there's anybody that our teams couldn't play with this year. That's just how this college football season is going.
Yeah.
Anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know. And neither one of them had a very dynamic. Each of them had a weakness. As good as Washington was offensively, they didn't have a great running game. Although the guy did go for 100 yards, didn't he? Their running back did go for 100 yards.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I don't know. But their defense wasn't overwhelming,
Correct.
as balanced as they were. But it's really hard because I keep kind of the eye test says that you had really good offenses. So where the defense is not so dominating because the offenses were so good. Like that game is really going to be a benchmark, I think, as we see more and more stuff on film to know how good those 2 teams are offensively and defensively.
It's funny because with Oregon, right, we have to remember they also had 200 yards rushing, in addition to 330 yards passing from Bo Nix. So I thought Oregon was really physical offensively. I thought they run it hard downhill, and their running back was good. I mean, you see some of those moves he was making. I'm like, this dude, he reminded me of like a poor man's Bichon. He was really good. They have a good running game, man. So that offense, to go along with their defense, I think what they're kind of the blueprint of I think what Brent Venables wants Oklahoma to look like. You saw how that offense was 200 yards rushing and 300 yards passing, along with the good defense. I 100%. Think that's kind of what. So yeah, It was it was impressive, man. And if you're Washington, that was a huge win. That was just
Well,
such a massive win because you're playing such a good team.
well, and it's interesting to think that Dan Lanning, a disciple of Kirby Smart, can have such a dynamic looking offense. Because as good as Georgia is, you just don't see that. You just don't think dynamic offense with Georgia. It just
Never,
never looks like what we saw on Saturday from
never.
Oregon. And Washington and Oregon, I don't know, man. Based on what I saw, either of those teams going up against Georgia, I mean, we think Georgia's the best team. They're on a 25, 26 game winning streak, whatever it is. I'm not taking anything away from them. I know how good they are, but golly, it's hard to think that Oregon and Washington State can't compete with them too. You know?
Yeah, just with Georgia, no one has been able to expose them for their, offensive weakness, right?
Yeah.
Because no one's been able to really keep up. They haven't faced a team with anywhere close to the level of talent that they have at all yet this season. And honestly, it doesn't look like they will, right? Florida's up and down. I know they beat South Carolina yesterday, but Florida's up and down. And the same with Tennessee. Tennessee's offense has not been anything like it was last year.
And
So,
even when they face Alabama in the SEC championship game, you
correct.
wouldn't put Alabama's offense is not in the top 20 in terms of
No. Yeah,
of
yeah,
you wouldn't
exactly.
trade it.
They don't
Yeah, you
scare
wouldn't.
you.
No, 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 no.
No, especially if you can contain Milrow and keep him from getting loose running the football because he's dynamic. It's interesting though, going back to that game yesterday, that he did not run the ball a lot. And he was extremely patient in the pocket, which I was surprised and pleasantly surprised. But I don't know. I think they're trying to really work on him and keep him in the pocket and have him make throws. So yeah, that doesn't look good. You know, that offense going against Georgia, I can't see them beating them either.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left in this episode, and since it's pretty much the midway point of the season, let's get a pulse check on how you think this 14 playoff, the last year for the 14 playoff, is going to be. I'd like you to give me your 4 playoff teams and 2 teams on the bubble. I know it's
Oh man,
probably
that okay. Let me pull up the top 25 real quick.
2 playoff teams. I mean, 4 playoff teams and the 2 teams on the bubble. Just to get you started, I'm definitely going to go
Okay.
Georgia. Definitely Georgia, right? They're in.
Yeah, yeah. Georgia, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Georgia's in.
Absolutely.
Michigan's in.
I'm gonna go Michigan too.
Okay, Michigan's in. So we know that by default, that's eliminating Ohio State, Penn State, and Alabama, right? We
I would
can't
say so this year. This year,
this
yeah.
year. Yeah. The way this year works. Okay, so then as the contenders, so if I look at the contenders, I'm looking at 4, 5, and 6 in the AP poll. Okay, so it's Florida State, Washington, and Oklahoma. Now, I think it's fair to say when we pick one team or the other, Oklahoma or Texas, that's fine. Those are interchangeable because I really think they're going to play again. So if you want to put Texas in because you're Texas, that's fine. But I think so. I'll put in Oklahoma. Does that mean you're going to put in Texas?
Yeah, we'll do that, especially for the sake of this. Yeah.
But here's the problem: is okay, and I agree with you. I think that those are the two. I think those 2 teams are in. I think one of those 2 teams are in if they can. If both teams, if each of them win out to the Big 12 championship, whoever wins is in. We agree with that.
We absolutely agree on that.
Okay, so that the problem is, dude, that leaves you with a really good Florida State team and a Michael Penix led Washington team that we just saw. Who, as of the end of week 7, who is in, who is out?
Oh man, that's tough. I think honestly, I would take Washington over Florida State because I like Penix a little bit more than I like Jordan Travis at quarterback.
Okay,
So I would take
so you want
Washington, but
Washington?
I'm gonna go Washington. Yeah, and I'm curious to see. I don't know. I haven't checked their schedule, but does Florida State play North Carolina?
I'll check it out. Let's check it out.
Because I don't know, man. I think UNC can give Florida State a game.
Yeah, but they're gonna have to play Oregon again.
Who Washington?
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? The Pac-12 is so crazy this year,
No, Florida
right? It's like
State.
they're gonna beat up on each other.
Florida State has Duke next week, which I think we'll find out a lot about that. So you got Duke, Wake Forest, Pitt, Miami, North Alabama, and Florida.
Oh man. Well, they,
I like
I
Florida.
think no, they
I'm
go
taking
ahead.
Florida State with that schedule.
I get it because of the schedule. Yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm gonna go Florida State too, honestly, because
Over Washington.
over Washington just because of the schedule. I think I would. I think Washington might be a little bit better of a team, honestly, but that schedule, man. Washington still has to play some really good teams, and the fact that they don't have to play North Carolina this year, that really helps them out a lot. The schedule really sets up for them. Now, look, the Duke game is going to be tough especially because Duke plays really good defense, right?
Yeah.
But man, I don't know. And then Florida, it's a rivalry game, so anything can happen. But Washington still has to play. They play Arizona State. I mean, that's not going to be a challenge. Stanford. I mean, I don't know. Is Stanford actually okay, or did they just Colorado just make them look good, right? Say
Yeah.
what you will about USC, that's still going to be a tough game, right? It's going to be at home. Caleb Williams will probably not be as bad as we saw him for the rest of his college career, right? Then they have to go. They have to play Utah. And then they go to Corvallis to play Oregon State, and then they play Washington State, the Apple Cup. So a
And
tough,
then,
tough schedule.
and then they
And
play Oregon again in a Pac-12 championship game.
yeah, potentially play
Probably.
Oregon again. Yeah.
Probably.
So
Yeah.
that's just a really tough schedule, man. This Pac-12, it's been so fun to watch this year, and it's only going to get better.
Okay. So, but what sounds like to me, you've got Washington in the 5th spot of the playoff. This is a playoff, not necessarily a ranking. It's a playoff.
Yeah, the playoff rankings. Yeah.
I've actually got Washington and Oregon as my 2 bubble teams because I think
Okay.
they're both. I think they're gonna cannibalize each other based on what you just talked about. Actually, do you like Ohio State there? Do you like Penn State there? Do you like North Carolina there? Do you like Oklahoma there? Can Oklahoma backdoor because their only losses to
I
Texas in a
do
close game?
know. I like the loser. Yeah, I like Oklahoma there.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. We'll keep tracking this every Sunday just to kind of give us an idea of where we're at. I mean, there's nothing on the line necessarily, but this is going to be this was the end of week 7, right?
Correct.
I can't
The
believe
rest of
that.
the season, man, I mean, we're starting to see crazy things happen, and we're just getting started, man. Every Saturday, we're going to see teams who are ranked and losing to teams that we feel like on paper they shouldn't lose to, but that's just how the season's going to go.
It's gone
Teams are going to lose big games, and yeah, just
to
buckle
be
up, man, because it's going to be crazy.
outside of LSU. It's been a pretty chalky year, though, right? Like it's
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah,
LSU is kind of that only team that was really expected to make a lot of noise. A USC, no, I don't think anybody expected them to lose like they did against Notre Dame. I believe USC is going to have some losses. I think they're going to fall out of the top 25 by the end of the
yeah. I mean,
year.
I see at least 3 more losses on their schedule.
But when I look at Georgia, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, and even North Carolina, maybe even Penn State, we're going to see what they are able to do. We haven't talked about Ohio State. Ohio State to me is the weakest of them. Like they've got Ohio State ranked at 3. I think they could be the weakest of the teams left that are undefeated.
Yeah, I think they're just holding their. I'm looking at the preseason AP poll right now,
Yes.
right? Let me put that on the screen for our people watching on YouTube.
Because, I mean, I'm not a big FPI fan, but I don't think the FPI has Ohio State in all that good a shape, do they?
I haven't seen it, but I would get that, right? But man, you want to talk about a great opportunity to show what they're about. Ohio State. They get Penn State this week. If they can beat them, and then I mean, we'll see what happens in that Michigan game. We talk about these games with having so much on the line. That Ohio State Michigan game is going to have
Actually,
everything on the line.
you want to hear this? They have Ohio State number 1. I was completely wrong. They've got
Really?
Ohio State number 1 in the FPI right now.
Go through the top 10 on that if you don't mind.
Ohio State, Oklahoma, Penn State, Michigan, Texas, Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, and Washington.
That's interesting. Here's the preseason poll here up on the screen. So we can kind of compare where we are now to where we started. You still have Georgia 1, you still have Michigan 2, you have Ohio State 3. Alabama was 4. They have a loss, but they're still in the top 10.
LSU's
Now
out.
LSU, yeah, I think they're ranked. I think they're in the 18
Oh,
somewhere around
Clemson!
there.
Look
Right?
Look at Clemson at 9. We've written them
USC
out
at
there.
6, Penn State at 7, Florida State was 8, Clemson at 9. Yeah, they've got 2 losses. Washington at 10, they've gone up. Texas was 11, it's gone up. Tennessee 12, they're still ranked. Notre Dame was 13. I think that's about where they're ranked. I know they're in the top 20. So yeah, I mean, Oregon's higher than they or where did Oregon drop to? 9?
Yeah, I bet. Yep.
Something like that. So yeah, K-State, they're not in right now. But TCU, they've had a couple of losses too. But for the most part, most of the teams that were ranked in the top 25 are still in the top 25.
It's going to be a great week. Oklahoma and Texas get back at it. Kevin, real quick, they tried to go to Bijan on a slant, and he got it. I think it got intercepted. So,
at the end there, yeah. Desmond Ridder, man, really up and down. He's a young guy. I don't know if he's good or not. I still don't know.
While we're recording this, Tampa Bay is playing. Let's get a quick update on Baker. They are down 17-6.
Okay, they're playing Detroit, though. Good team. Detroit's a good football team.
Like the whole fourth quarter to go. Baker, yeah, I think Detroit's got a good defense, dude. Listen, Baker's still playing with some house money because they're 4-1, 3-1. They're about to be 3-2. That's all right. Baker,
yeah,
who we got tonight? Who's Sunday night?
Today.
Who's Sunday night football?
Let's find out. Yeah, I think it's the Giants. I forget who they're playing though.
Ugh. The Giants do nothing for me, dude.
Yeah, seriously, Daniel Jones. I mean, I love Saquon, but he's
nothing, dude.
The
Giants are like
healthy.
I can't imagine if I lived in New York City and had to deal with the Giants and the Jets.
Like, what was crazy? It's crazy how they won 2 Super Bowls in the last 15 years or so. The Giants. With Eli, and beat the Patriots for both. Like, how does that even happen?
I'll tell you what, dude. I watched the Manning cast, the Monday Night Football Manning cast. I've come to like it a lot.
They do a good job.
They do a good job. They got good guests on. That guy is such a dope. Eli Manning's a dope, dude.
He really is.
But he knows it, right? And he owns it. And he's like, you know what? I'm not. He's like, I'm not apologizing for my two Super Bowls. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's just
exactly. Yeah, they went out and they took it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
but
I'm sure Brady keeps Brady up at night. Man, I can have you 2 more Super Bowls with Eli freaking Manning beat me in both.
Oh my gosh! All right, who's
Bills and Giants tonight? By the way, Buffalo.
Oh, I like Josh
Allen.
To
see Josh Allen. Yeah, Stephon Diggs.
I like Josh Allen. That won't be too fun. He'll do something stupid or amazing, one or the other. He'll be either stupid or amazing, or both. Might do both in the same game.
Yeah.
That's
Kevin, what makes it fun, though. Makes it fun.
We've got our preview episode coming up Wednesday. So hey, man, enjoy the Giants and the Bills tonight, and all the rest of the football. We'll talk to you next week. Boomer.
Okay.